Welcome, Francis O'Rafferty, to the Data Strategy Show. It's great to see you. How you doing?
I'm good. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's fantastic to have you. And so, the show is all about women in data and tech. Or must not forget that one. Um, and so, look, for our audience out there, it would be really great to sort of understand, who is Francis, a bit about your background, kind of 30,000 foot, and what's been your journey then in sort of data, and how have you arrived at where you are now?
Yeah, so I grew up in the northeast of England, in a kind of old mining town. So data was not really on my radar at all.
Yeah, I bet.
I was a dancer. I thought I'd be a
Oh,
professional
wow.
dancer. I spent my youth on stage as much as I could.
And
Um,
what kind of dancing?
oh, ballet, tap, jazz, contemporary,
Amazing.
whatever I could do. I did Irish dancing for a bit as well, which
Wow.
fits with my surname now, didn't before.
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
but yeah, so a bit of everything. And then I kind of did my auditions to go to dance school at 16, got a place, and decided I just wasn't mature enough and I wasn't ready. So
Oh,
I
wow.
stayed around, and during the 2 years when I did my A levels, I just really started to love maths, and I thought actually there's more of a career here. I'm actually really good at this. I like problem solving, um, and I basically went, let's just find a maths degree that I can do with something exciting. So I went to Sheffield and I did a maths degree there with a year in Berkeley in San
Okay.
Francisco.
Yeah,
So that
cool.
was that was my added excitement. And that was amazing. It was just such a good learning curve to see how people learned in different area as well. And I did an amazing course there on like genome theory and like the mathematics and the
Hmm.
statistics behind genes, and that
Hmm.
kind of brought the
Hmm.
data side of it to life a bit more. And then when I graduated, it was the middle of the recession. All the
Oh,
jobs were
boy.
in London, and I didn't really know what any of the jobs were. I was reading these job descriptions and it was like, would be good for someone with a maths background who likes problem solving. So I was going along to these interviews trying to work out what these corporate jobs were. And if I had a couple of offers at the end, and one of them was from a company called Blueprint that were a very
Hmm.
small consultancy, probably like 100 people. And they were kind of taking an intake of, I think it was five or six grads, and they were going to teach them everything about business intelligence, everything about ETL, everything about data warehousing. And I thought, this sounds interesting. I kind of get what's going on.
Okay.
Let's give that a go. And it was an amazing program. They started with business questions, data modeling. We
Yeah.
really learned the kind of how to properly understand what you needed the data for before we even started modeling or touch the code, which
Yeah.
has proved so beneficial
I
in
bet.
my
Yep.
data career.
Yep.
So I was there for 5 years. They got bought by a bigger company, went through that kind of transition. And then I'd met my partner. We were starting to plan our wedding. And I was sort of thinking, I could kind of do with somewhere new. What's out there? I'd actually interviewed for Accenture as a grad, but they'd had like a 2 year waiting list for their grad program and
Hmm.
wasn't going to hang around and wait. So I applied back to Accenture because they had a very good maternity policy. I'd actually enjoyed the interview process previously. And I got a job there, and I was there for 8 years while I had my
Okay.
kids. I moved around from kind of their finance and risk practice doing
Hmm.
data to their technology doing
Hmm.
more focused on data. And I worked through um, finance transformation programs. I did data architecture. I did data management. And just before I left there, I was really focusing on data products. And that's what I
Right.
really kind of brought to Beringa. And when I came to Beringa, it was like, I want to go and deliver data products. And I've been at an insurance company delivering data products since I got to Beringa, shaping what it means, how they
Yeah.
deliver it, how we improve the data quality in the background to make these products even better.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, really passionate about, how we think of data as with that product mindset, and how we get people to really trust and use our data. And that's
Hmm.
kind of
Hmm.
where I've ended up focusing on. So, business intelligence into the coding, doing the warehousing, doing the design, back through architecture into kind of data management, and now really fighting for data adoption and getting
Yep.
good
Yep.
quality data on the table.
Hmm. And that's quite a journey then, because I mean, you sound like a very arts-based person who's sort of then, and arts and maths often go well together anyway.
Yeah.
I look at my daughter, and she's really good at maths, and she also is a really good musician. So it's interesting to see that when you then moved into the whole world of data, and I think part of the show and the sort of the sentiment that I hear out there is that, maybe 20 years ago, women, it was very difficult for women to get, through the door, to actually start their careers and kind of build, a unique position. How have you sort of done that in your career life cycle, and what are the learnings that you've seen, and sometimes what are the things that you've seen which aren't great, and perhaps, you've had to struggle, or you've had to kind of go up against a form of, you know bias, or whatever that might be.
Yeah, and I think it's just the different approaches as well. And some of it I
Mm,
think is my background, and some of it is being a
yeah,
woman, and it's that kind of like
yeah, yeah.
which one's the awkwardness sometimes. But obviously, like coming into a corporate environment where most of the management are men. I mean, the one woman who was kind of in the leadership role was the person running the grad scheme, which was,
Right.
it wasn't the thought leadership role, it was the nurturing role, right? So
Yeah, yeah.
it's it's that kind of, okay, all of your managers are men, and you can see naturally that some of the men entering the workforce and making those bonds, and it's almost like a bit more of a sometimes forced. I mean, I'm a huge football fan. I will sit and talk to people about football like
Okay.
forever, but
Yeah,
even that didn't necessarily help in those early days. It was,
yeah.
that kind of, you see the graduates going out for coffee with the senior men, and then they'd kind of, if I sort of said, oh, can we talk about career development, how does it go, I'd then get taken out to like a posh restaurant for lunch, and I was like, I'm quite happy just going for a coffee, like it doesn't have to be like, and it was that kind of like, it's not necessarily that they're not trying to be nice, they are trying to be nice, but it's just not not putting themselves in my shoes and working out what
Right.
I needed from it.
Yeah,
And I
yeah.
found that quite hard at the beginning, just getting used to
Mm-hmm.
that corporate lifestyle. The
Mm,
fact that
mm,
nearly everyone above me who was making decisions were men. I mean, I
mm.
grew up in the Northeast, which is full of strong women who, like, especially my family, they were very much, the women planned things, women got things organized, women
Okay.
got things done, right? That that
Yeah,
that was how it worked. The men went to work, but women got things done.
yeah.
So trying to navigate this whole, okay, I have to work out what the men are thinking to work out how to get it done, because they're all the people in the leadership, and what I'm saying is not getting through, and coming up with different ways of saying it to try and get heard. um
Mm-hmm.
I think was a bit of a struggle at the beginning.
Mm.
But I remember when I went to Accenture, and I mean, at that time, what was it, 2015, they were known for being much more gender equity, and they've really
Yeah.
put a lot of effort into kind of getting that balance. And the first project that I went on, it was 5 women, and we were like, is this
Okay.
normal? Is this normal to have like we probably should get some gender diversity into this team?
Okay,
And
so
that
you actually had the opposite
we had
sort
the
of view.
opposite.
Yeah.
And I remember like that feeling very different on the ground, and just
Yeah.
like, things would get done. There was that like ease of communication. Um, and then later projects after that was much more mixed. Like it actually felt like we were starting to get that kind of 50-50 balance,
Mm-hmm.
especially
Mm-hmm.
within the Accenture team. You did then, I still then went into projects where, especially data architecture, I don't know what it is about data architecture, but you'd go into rooms and it'd be like 10 men in their 40s
Yeah.
or 50s. And it'd be like, okay, right, I gotta.
Hey, listen, you're not the only one who felt that. Even I felt that when I was kind of doing data architecture and stuff like that. So I felt like, even I walked in, I think, oh my God, this is a bit strange. I'm, being quite young, and then suddenly they're 40, 50 years old, and I'm supposed to have that sort of same experience. You think, whoa, no, that's not going to happen. But I kind of see it from you. Definitely see it from your flip, as well, because
Yeah,
that's yeah, just for me it was daunting, but I'm sure it was for you as well.
yeah. So I guess that's kind of, they're things that stood out for me over the
Yeah.
years, but it's changed so much. It really
Mm.
has. I mean, I'm on calls these days, and there's a guy that I work with, and he's great. He's one of those people that just makes sure that everyone on the call is getting airtime, and everyone's opinions being heard. Um, and if you haven't said anything, especially the women in the room, he kind of leans on them and says, "And what do you think about this?" And he'll almost kind of raise your voice. And
Mm-hmm.
that
Mm-hmm.
amount of allyship that's around at the minute, I think, is really, really good, and it has changed so much
Yeah.
over the 15 years that I've worked in this space.
And just going back to the dynamics of the fully the team that was fully stocked with women,
Mm,
and tell me about that dynamic, because it's interesting to me. I often hear very different experiences from women who work with women,
yeah.
and there can be varying different styles as well in those kind of leadership approaches. What are the kinds of sort of leadership approaches that you find are very much tuned to success, and are they different to what men, how men lead? And it's just a question that I sort of ask myself, and after speaking to people, because they'll say, well, having a woman leader is different. So what is the difference between the two, the male and the female, and is there one? So I'm just trying to understand that.
Mhm. So I think the thing that was different, and I'm trying to think, but I don't know how relevant this is now, but if I think back to that moment, the thing that was different is when I worked with women leaders at that point, they would check in, and
Right.
they without micromanaging,
Hmm.
they'd kind of make sure things were moving. Some of the male leaders that I'd worked with kind of explained the task and then came back and were like, "Is it done?"
Hmm.
And it felt like less of a conversation. That woman in particular that I worked with on that project, she was very good at checking in and giving you a space to say, "I'm struggling here.
Right.
Can
Okay.
you help?"
Okay. Okay.
And I do think that the women that I've worked with, and there are men that do this as well, but
Mm.
probably more recently I've seen men doing it.
Okay.
At the beginning, I didn't feel like the men had that approach as much. It was more of a, I've explained the task. Do you get it? Yes. And I think it's sometimes just the language that came
Mm.
across of a,
Mm.
this is what needs doing, a very task orientated based. Whereas some of the women leaders that I've worked with have been more, how do you feel about that? So more emotional based, like, are you
Right.
feeling like you're on track? Are you, which I think when you ask someone how they're feeling about something, it gives
Yeah.
them the space to actually say anything. Whereas if you say, how is the task going? You kind of feel obliged to say it's fine or it's going well,
Yes.
or unless something terrible is happening.
Yeah. And I wonder whether that was, and I'm just thinking out loud here, is when you start to talk about feelings as a male, and you start to talk to a female about, how do you feel? Maybe that puts a female in an uncomfortable position, perhaps. It's almost like, well, what do you mean? How do I feel? Do you speak like that to somebody else? So I'm just sort of thinking about it on the, flip side. And I've led all women team, and I've had to be in that position. Believe me, I'm earlier in my career, I had, I think 10 women in one team, and then there was probably a 70%, 70-30 in another team, 70% women and 30% men. And then in one other team, it was fully women. So I know exactly what you're talking about, because there is a different way that you communicate. And I think I had to learn that. I grew up around women. So for me, I was very much, I had, I don't know, always. I had, cousins and sisters, and I mean, they were all my sisters at the end of the day, because we didn't kind of have a distinction between the two. So, any given day, there'd be 6 or 7 of my sisters around me, and that's how it was. So I think empathizing, and I grew up with a very different kind of emotional intelligence quotient, as opposed to, some of the other people that I've seen who lead. And I think that's probably something that's missing. So the empathy bit, and I think also maybe there's something about that feeling of, can I ask somebody how they feel, as opposed, and how will that make me look as an individual? And I don't know whether that's true, but is that something that you might think is an approach that only, now you say it's different, but back then you said mainly women took, and maybe that was the barrier. I'm just kind of thinking
Maybe, I
about it
don't
in that
know.
way.
Maybe men have found that it's become more acceptable to talk about feelings, and some of the
Yeah.
leadership training is much more around, making sure that you're in touch with how your team is feeling.
Yeah.
I do think it's less of a less noticeable these days.
Mm, mm, mm.
Um, and I think I also found, especially earlier in my career as well, that the women leaders would push me harder.
Okay. All right. Because
So
yeah,
they'd be like, you know, when's your next promotion case? What are you
yeah.
working on this? What are you getting out of it? Are you doing enough? Um, they did push me harder actually.
Okay. Interesting. Interesting. So, how's the dynamic with your team now? How's the dynamic with, how you work within that team context? What have you taken from that sort of leadership experience into your own leadership now?
Yeah, so I'm very much I regularly check in with my teams and I regularly
Yeah.
check in with people that I've moved on from. So all my advisees that I had at Accenture, I still
Hmm.
meet up with, and you know,
Fantastic.
I like to see how they're doing and making sure that they are still succeeding in their careers. So I I do take a big interest in the teams that I look after,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
I'm very much like my team is a reflection of me. So I'm always
Yeah.
like, what can I do to help you more? Are you enjoying it? Are you learning? Is this challenging you? Um, and I think like that's the main thing. People have to come to work because they like it. They have to like the
Hmm.
challenge, especially with data. If you're not curious and you don't want to explore the next thing, then you're not going to succeed in this career. So I spend a lot of time just asking what's next, what are you thinking
Hmm.
about, what
Hmm.
else have you noticed? And I think that helps spark curiosity. The other thing that I learned on my journey was about um not always being the superstar. And I talked to my team about this
Okay.
as well,
All right.
is when you're a junior, you are the superstar. It's all about you. It's about what you deliver, how you can do it. But as you move up, it's like how are you creating that next lot of superstars coming through?
Yes. Yeah.
And where are you giving them the experience? And I think I found, especially like I came back 4 days a week after one of my maternity leaves, and I think that was the big eye opener is how was I going to manage this 1 day a week when I wasn't there? Who was looking after the team? Who was making sure everything managed? And actually, that was an amazing opportunity to give someone who was a level below me 1 day a
Hmm.
week where they stepped up into that
Yeah.
kind of manager role.
Hmm.
And I could work with them, coach them through it, and they had that opportunity. And actually, it wasn't me. I then felt less guilty about not being there and supporting them. And actually, no, me not being there is giving this opportunity for somebody to step up. So I
Yeah.
kind of try and look for opportunities like that these days. And where can I delegate? Where can I give people the opportunities to kind of move into the next step? Because I found that really valuable when people did that
Mm.
for me.
Mm. Mm. Yeah, and it's a nurturing kind of feeling as well, isn't it? Definitely coming up and giving them that responsibility and some accountability. Do you find that there's lots of people that I speak to and lots of women I speak to will often tell me that there's still a flaw in the sort of um, in the conference speaking, certainly when you see all male panels, and I've certainly been on panels where I'm the only male. Um, are you still finding that's a drawback? Is that still a difficult moment for women, or has that been overcome? Is there something that you can say, well, actually, no, that's normalized now, or it's equalized in itself? What's your experience on that?
I think for me personally,
Yeah.
comes down more to what people on the panel have to say.
Right. Okay.
And
Interesting.
if you can have it, you can have an all male panel that
Yeah.
has very different viewpoints and everyone has a valid reason to be up there.
Yeah.
Now, if I can sit and watch a panel and there's diversity of thought, kind of not too bothered. It isn't, although I do get that sense of warmth, especially when I see women with a northern accent up there speaking. That
Right. Okay.
especially makes me. So I saw Jill Scott speak at Women in
Yeah.
Data a couple of years ago, and I
Yeah.
remember just being like the Sunderland accent on the big stage, being
Okay.
like,
Yeah.
"Oh, do you know what? I actually just feel that kind of bit of pride." So there is that, which I
Yeah.
do like. But actually, I
Yeah.
think if there's diversity of thought in the panel, then I'm usually okay with it, and I I find it engaging enough that I'm like, this is
Mm.
great. The problem that I have is when you have four men that are very similar and almost just
Right.
repeating each other.
Yes.
And then I'm kind of
Yeah.
like, what's the point? Like, you might as well just
Yeah.
have one
And
person up there doing a monologue. And
yeah.
I've been at conferences where they just kind of nod and agree with each other.
Mhm.
And I found those much less
Yeah, and
beneficial.
I would say the same. You would get no value from that at all, because there's no point in just sitting there listening to, people agreeing. And at the point of a panel is to have disagreement, in
Exactly.
some way, and have critical conversation and critical thinking in that, and debate. Where do you think the barriers still exist for women, if they do, in the data and tech world?
I think we're just not as good at showcasing ourselves sometimes. I think
Ah, okay.
the women that I speak to, like,
Mm.
I men definitely get imposter syndrome too, but I do think that there is
Believe me, I mean, I
100%,
have
right?
had
But I do
it.
think that more women go through that.
Right.
Should I stand up there? And I can see this in
Yeah.
performance achievement stuff as well, right? You get advisees that are coming through, and for some reason, quite often, a higher percentage of the men have got
Mm.
themselves organized, they've written it down, etc. You look at the women that are coming through, they're nervous about getting the stuff on paper in the first place. It
Hmm.
then all says we instead of I. So then you have to
Right.
kind of go through and be like, right, well,
Yep.
what did you do? Let's pick
Yep.
out the actual things. And I just think there just seems to be this thing where women are just not as good at talking
Oh,
about
okay.
themselves in a confident way.
Yeah.
And there are some
Yeah.
people that are amazing at doing it. Again, there's always exceptions, but the trend that I see is that, especially with those promo cases, like men put themselves forward, they're willing to just kind of put themselves out there. And it's the same with jobs, right? They say women won't apply for jobs unless they tick all the criteria. There's something about that kind of, we have to get it right before we do it, which doesn't
Mm.
seem to be as big for men. They seem to be much more willing, more risk taking at kind of putting themselves out there.
Oh,
And I don't know why that is.
yeah.
It's an
Okay.
interesting
I
one.
was about to ask you, why do you think that is?
Don't know. But
That's really interesting for me, because I know what you mean, by the fact that a man, and I mean, I will do it. If somebody says, will you speak at this panel, and I can look at the subject, and I say, well, I'll speak at it, but I'll come at it from my own view in terms of, what I've done, and it might not tick off every criteria, but I know that I can speak to it. But then on the flip side, I will look. I've done this maybe only maybe 6 or 7 months ago, where somebody asked me to be on a panel. The title was something, which was very good for me. And then suddenly I got an email saying this is the new title, and I thought, I can't speak about that. I can't do it. And I knew that if I went on, I would just be sitting there very quietly thinking. So I know my limitations. It, but is it just a confidence problem, or is it the feeling that of being exposed and not knowing
possibly.
enough of
I
the
don't know, because
subject?
I also think that if you ask a woman to do something, the
Yeah.
chances of them saying yes are very high,
Well,
because
I've
they
got the
don't
flip
like
side of
saying
that.
no.
I've got the flip side of that,
Okay.
and I'll be quite frank about this. When I first started my podcast, I asked a lot of women to come on, or most of them. I would say 95% of them said no.
Interesting.
And that was really interesting for me, because I just thought, oh, okay, I'm giving you, I've got a platform here. I'd really like to talk to you about your career, and it was a subject driven, theme, in terms of whether they were, talking about, I don't know, data governance, or, data architecture, or what they were doing. And that was really quite interesting to me to see that. Um, so yeah, it was, and I should have asked why they didn't want to come on. And I
Yeah.
did actually ask a couple of people, and they said they weren't ready to do it.
Yes. So there, but again, that's
Yeah,
exposing you to something. So I
yeah.
think with with tasks and with promotions and with roles, I find that if you ask a woman to do something, they're less likely to say no, because they want to, especially when you've already got the relationship. I feel like the women in my team, if I ask them to do something, they will do it.
Yeah.
Occasionally, when I ask men to do something, if they don't want to do it, they'll just say no. And they seem more confident saying no with it. They're like, no, I don't do that. And I'm like, oh, okay. Okay. And then this is again why women end up doing more of the admin tasks or stuff, because they
Right.
will take those on,
Okay.
they'll say yes to those things. But maybe that is because it doesn't expose them. It's a quieter task. It's not one that's
Mm-hmm.
gonna
Mm-hmm.
expose them. Whereas
Mm.
maybe the men are looking for things that expose them more. I don't know. It's
Yeah.
but it's interesting.
Yeah. I think it's very interesting from my perspective to hear that. Um, but let's shift. What would you say, um, to those who are up and coming in their careers right now? Maybe they're thinking about going into data, and they're at their sort of graduate level. They're just about to, sort of go into the corporate world. What are some of the things that you might say to them if you were sitting across the table and advising them about their career advancement, or what would be good for them? What would be your kind of top three things that you would say, hey, listen, from my experience, this is possibly what you need to do?
Yeah. So I guess the first in being data, be curious, go down those rabbit holes, explore the things that are really interesting to you, and make note of the stuff you don't go after. So I think that's equally as important. So what do you not enjoy doing? And then be aware of that so you can say you don't want to do that.
Mm,
Um, the second one is just go and meet people, go and talk to people. Um, I think that's one of the things that when I moved to London, I didn't really know anyone. I kind of knew the area. I didn't really have much money because I was a graduate in London. And all went on housing.
yeah.
Um, so just going and meeting people, there's so many data meetups now. You can go and get free beer, free pizza most nights of the
Yes.
week at some meetup, right? Go out, meet people, like socialize, right?
Yes.
Like all
Yeah.
that stuff and it's so easy to now. Like everything's on your phone, you have notifications about everything, right? It's not,
Hmm.
you don't have to go Googling for hours to find these things.
Yeah.
Um, so that, and then the third one is just find someone a couple of levels above you that you can kind of model yourself off. And I think it took me a long time to find a role model,
Mm,
because I
mm.
guess I think I was very much like, everyone to their own. I can make it by myself.
Right.
I
You
can
can do
push
it
it
yourself.
through, and
Yeah.
I've managed to get this far. But actually, you don't need to do that. Like it's much easier when you find a team and you do it together, and you've got someone to kind of mentor you through, tell you what's kind of coming next. Like I love talking to people about, what they should be doing early in their career, because I can see
Hmm.
all of the mistakes that I made, and I'm like, I do this differently, I do this differently. So yeah, find someone that you can talk to about those ideas, because
Mm.
people will tell you like little golden nuggets that you don't even realize that you
Yes.
don't know. It's like you
Yeah.
don't know what you don't know, right? So
Yeah.
go
Exactly.
go talk to someone that's going to tell you those things.
Yeah. And then on the leadership side, you know, you've developed your leadership, over these years. And, starting off as a grad, as most of us probably did, we started in that, grad cycle. Um, what are some of the lessons from a leadership perspective that you would offer those people as well, and how to nurture and develop their own leadership skills?
Yeah, so I think you kind of need to know what's going on to be a leader
Hmm.
still. So I still think that networking is the junior level, but then as you move up, like how do you keep on top of, like, especially at the minute, the rate of change is huge, right?
Yes.
So
Yeah.
it's really leveraging that network to understand what's happening in the spaces that you're interested in the spaces that you want to be known as a leader in,
Hmm.
and having those conversations regularly. Um, and then I guess it's knowing your team, know what your
Mm.
team need.
Mm.
What do your team need from their leader? Because that's
Yeah.
not always the same, and it's not always the same at the same company or the same time period. That things fluctuate. Um, so I'm like, when I talk about data products, I'm the same. It's like it's all about feedback. You've got to constantly have
Mm.
that feedback of,
Mm.
is what you're
Very
doing
true.
working, or
Yeah.
does it need to change? And not being scared to change and evolve. Like it's not,
Hmm.
you're not reinventing stuff, you're just like evolving it, right? So
Hmm.
how
Hmm.
do you constantly evolve the leadership to meet what the team needs?
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, I do a lot of, I tend to kind of like, take my team out for lunch, try and have coffees with them. I do a lot of catching up with people and teams just because it's much easier now.
Hmm.
um
Hmm.
to understand if they're getting out of their projects,
Yeah.
are they doing the learning they want to do? Like, I when ChatGPT came out, I remember one of my team rang me up and sort of said, "You've got to look at this thing. It's amazing." Like, he probably got me onto it like months before I would have got to it myself, because, like that it's not all about you as a leader to know, right? It's about
Yeah.
talking to everyone else, and everyone will pick up on different trends and tell you about them, and you can kind of tell from how excited people are about talking about them which ones are going to take off, right? But yeah, you can't work that out in silo. You need to have your peers and have
Yeah.
your team telling you, what they're excited about, and make
Sure.
sure you're giving those opportunities.
And then introspectively thinking about just you now, and how what would you say are the things that you've struggled with from a leadership position? You know, if because I've been in that position and I've had to develop myself because I know that there are deficiencies in my leadership capabilities. So what are those things that you saw early that you needed to focus on? Because I think so those are some of the things that we don't kind of think about or talk about. Because no one wants to give away that I'm weak in this area, but I think that's just the human condition.
Yeah.
Um,
I think for me, it was my confidence, like
right.
that I deserve to be there.
Mm,
And I think that's part of it. And I mean, when people started asking me to speak at conferences, and I was like, why do you want me to speak? What do I know? do I know enough to speak about it? And then I'd speak, and people were like, "Are you going to write a book? Because it's so interesting and
yes.
it's so structured." And
Yeah.
I was like,
Yeah.
"Really? Not sure."
Yeah.
Like, I don't even think it's imposter syndrome. I think it's just like, but the stuff that I'm talking about feels so basic to me
Yeah.
that surely
Yeah.
everyone else knows it. And I think that was the big thing for me, is like the confidence that I did actually know more than the average
Mm,
person, and that I did
mm,
deserve to be a leader in this space, and
mm.
I can stand up and confidently talk about it, and people want to listen most of the time.
Yes.
So yeah, I think that's probably been the biggest thing.
Yeah. And
And
and and the barrier for that was actually just getting up on stage and feeling and getting that feedback from people.
no, I'm to be
Yeah.
fair, I still think I battle against it. I battle against the confidence of, like, yes, you can go and do this. And
Yeah.
I still think every time, like, do I know enough to be here? And I still get nervous before I speak, because I'm like, if I actually got anything to say that people want to listen to.
Yes.
Um, so I think that's something that I still constantly battle against.
Yeah, I mean that's something that yeah, well, I certainly do. It's still one of those things that before I get on stage, and maybe I'm a little bit lucky because I come from an arts background, a little bit like you. I was, a young budding actor, and I wanted to, be on stage, so I did a lot of it. So it was a little bit easier for me to get on stage. But certainly, yeah, I still kind of stand there and I think, oh my God, in front of all these people, are they going to listen? And have I got something to offer, which is of value?
Yeah, because it is
You know,
different to like reading someone else's work. Like when you're on
oh,
stage doing acting, it's
absolutely.
script, right?
Oh,
It's somebody
yes.
else's work.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'm like, oh, if somebody else just wrote it for me, would I feel better delivering it? But then it's not authentic, right? So
No, that's right.
it is
Yeah,
that kind of like, have I actually written, or am I talking about something that somebody actually cares about?
yeah.
And it's the same with clients, right? You go into a client, and every time you go into a new client, you have got, like, obviously we've got something to bring, right?
Sure.
Because we've got this wealth of knowledge, and we've
Mm,
delivered this
mm,
across multiple programs. But
mm.
every time you go in, you know the least about their business,
Of
and you
course.
have to be the person in the room that knows the least about that, but you have to have the confidence that you know the most about something else.
Yes,
I know that I
exactly.
know this.
Yeah.
Um,
And I think we're
so yeah,
lucky to be able to ask questions. It
yes,
always comes back to that. Do you have clarity of thought, and can you ask the right questions, and just get to understand who they are, and
exactly. And that's what
that.
we're good at.
Yeah, yeah, exactly, exactly. Fantastic. Francis, I've had a really wonderful conversation with you, and thank you so much for kind of being open about, your background and all of your experiences. And I hope that, many of your mentees will be listening to this, and getting a lot of your experience and wealth of knowledge as well. But thank you so much for coming on the show.
Awesome, great to speak. Cheers.
Yeah, thanks.